Veronica Stoneman, Veronica Loretta, because my uncle named me. I went 6 months before I had a name because Mama had ran out of names by my time, and it didn't matter too much, I don't reckon. But Aunt Jack, that was Mama's sister, and Uncle Smitty, she married a gentleman from out of New York, and he came over to see the new baby. I was the 17th. And it came in, and she said, "What's the name of it, Hattie?" Mama said, "Well, I was thinking about naming her Sadie Vale." That would have fixed me right there. And so, even though I like the name, see, I'm covering my tracks. Anyway, so they said, "Well, why don't we name her Veronica Loretta after my 2 sisters? And we'll call her Roni." So I didn't have it on my birth certificate. It just said 17th child, female Stoneman. That was on my birth certificate. Makes you feel really important. Everybody loved me.
They were just waiting for the perfect name.
I know, that's right, and I don't mind. I think Veronica is a pretty name. It's satisfying to me. Real. People, you go to their house and they get out their banjos and their fiddles, and they like the Irish. The Irish are so good with their laughter and their music, and so are the Scots. That's who mostly settled in those mountains. Scotch Irish, some English. That was doing the English literature with, well, whatever. But anyway, I do like the Irish in the timing. And the do-little-do, I love the old time. If in my mind, in my ears, I can hear Grandpa going on his fiddle. And it was brought down from one generation to another. He taught Mommy the fiddle too. And she played the old time bow lick. And it would go do-little-do, diddle-do-do-do, do-little-do-do-do. See, it would just, where your feet would just go with it. It makes you want to dance to that doodle-daddle-doodle-diddle-doo-doo-doo, doodle-daddle-doo-doo-doo. Yeah, I like that. That's what I think. Old time music is of the soul of the people, and the roots, what they came over here. It's our heritage. That's the only thing. And now Nashville's kind of screwing it up, but other than that, they are. All you hear is a drum and bass, boom, boom, whatever. But we won't go into that. I already did. So it's more, you see this cabin? It's like this cabin. This cabin has heard music in it before. There's been a lot of laughter and children running around. This is the Buchanan Log Home right here in Nashville, and I'm so proud of it. I love it here. And this reminds me of the roots of our music, and you have all the harps. You have the juice harp, do, and you have the fiddles and the banjos and the laughter. Oh yeah, Grandpa told me a story when I was little about a fiddle. Maybe some of y'all out there might know about this. I don't know, because I told it around, because a lot of people that are studying music don't know really what they're studying. It is, now that's my opinion, but what's my opinion amongst millions? But anyway, Grandpa sitting on the porch one day, and we saw Grandpa was whittling. That was on the work portion of the old cabin. And he saw a feller coming down over the hill, and he was carrying his fiddle. And he yelled, hey, stranger. Now this is the real McCoy, okay? That's what our music is about. Hey, stranger, I see you carrying a fiddle. Come on over and we'll fix up some victuals. The old feller came, and Grandma went, she gritted her teeth at my grandfather, because she had to fix all her victuals, have dinner for him. So he came up, and I sit down beside of him, and Grandpa said, well, let's hear you fiddle a tune. It's a mighty fine looking fiddle. Well, the old fella started playing, and I promise you, it was the worst fiddling I ever heard or noise in my whole life. It was like cats scrouching on a chalkboard. You throw a bunch of them on there. It was that bad. It truly was. But I didn't say anything. And Dad, after he finished, Granddaddy said, "That's the best fiddling I ever heard in my life." That was Grandpa. And so he said, "How many rattlesnake rattles you got in that fiddle?" And the old feller said, "I got 8 of them." He was proud of that. So he said, "Play me another tune." And Grandma went, "Oh my gosh." And he started in again, and it was, really bad. So when he left, I said, "Grandpa, he had rattlesnake rattles in his fiddle. Does that mean it sounds good?" I said, "The music was awful." And he started laughing because I was about 6, 7 years old. And he said, "No, child." He said, "We used to have our fiddles. We didn't have cases for them, and we'd hang them on the cabin wall, and the wasps would make their nest. The mud daubers would make their nest inside. So if you we didn't have cases, see, for the fiddles, and he said that kept the mud daubers out. They wouldn't come near it if they could smell the snake rattles, Wow. So that goes along with a lot of the real thing, the folklore, and it's true. But now, some fellow was on Facebook the other night, and he said he was a fixer of fiddles, and he said he took the back off and he'd put them all back together because some of the glue would come. And I wrote back and I said, "Did you ever run across 3 or 4 of them that had rattlesnake rattles in them?" "Oh yeah, a lot of times." I said, "That's the real McCoy." Yeah. That's real stuff. I like that. Yeah, but that's what they did. Did you ever see one with rattlesnake rattles?
Yeah.
You just go to the fiddlers where they're all standing around, them old timers, and they've had their fiddles. They prideful with them fiddles. And when they fiddle in each other's house, they'd roll the rug back and everybody would clog dance or flatfoot. And then the men would go to the spring house, for a little nip. And they would let the ladies see them have a nip, as if the ladies didn't know they were doing it, I'm sorry, I'll be good. Because there's history, and it's history of our country and the history of our heritage. Just pure, down to earth, in my opinion, is heritage. You just hear it as a child, and from one generation to another, it makes me chill to think about how many children have sat and listened to their grandpa or their great-grandfather, and they would play and they would sing, the children, that was the joy to them too. And it taught them to laugh and smile. And in a world that we have today with a lot of problems, they're gonna do, I promise you, my opinion, I had a dream that it all turned around and came back to the real thing where people could love each other and laugh and have fun and genuinely just give your heart with your music. And that's what the people did. They didn't have no place to go, and they wouldn't go anyway. That's how Daddy brought a lot of people to Bristol, because he told Mr. Peer, he said Mr. Peer was going to Atlanta, but Daddy said, "No, come to these mountains here around Bristol." He said, "There's abundance of music in these mountains." It's like Grandpa, my brother Scotty played the fiddle. Grandpa told him, he said, "Son, you got a good fiddle wrist." We were up there when he fell, and he was propped up in the bed, and he had a fiddle hanging on the wall. And he said, "Scotty," and Scott was just a young kid, and he said, "Get my fiddle down and see what you can do with it." He wanted to see how he held the bow, how he could get a little sound out of it. And he said, "Son, you have a fine fiddle wrist. Now, if you've checked on Scotty Stoneman's fiddling, you can know that he knew what he was talking about. But it went from one generation to the other. Like Mama played the fiddle, she played the old time. But as you get older, you hear other sounds, other people playing. You know, and then you want to, how did they get that? Well, wait a minute, there's a note I don't understand. I'm going to see about getting that, and I'll add a little that. See, you add a little bit to it. And next thing you know, it's not the real thing, is it? Yeah, it kind of gets out. There's so many, especially older ladies. I saw an older lady down in Georgia one time. I didn't know if she was from Georgia, but she was at this place a long time ago. I can't remember, but she played the claw hammer, or the, drop thumb like Mommy did, and she really could play too. And because it reminded me so much of Mommy and Grandpa's banjo playing, it was really, I really enjoyed her. I think just being around people and seeing how they feel about the banjo. As a matter of fact, hon, today I can go where there's a lot of musicians at, and I love them each and every one. I really do, because Daddy said no matter how good you are or how good you think you are, somebody's better. They just ain't been discovered yet. My brother's coming, I'm so good, and he'd tell them that. But I can go today, and they don't like to get me up on the stage. They say not many people can follow an old banjo. So I say, well, I'll wait my turn, and then I'll get up there and floor them. That's how I think. Ain't that right? Now, y'all know it's right, and I hate to, I'm not bragging on myself, a Swanee. Like Daddy said, he had a lot of youngins, and none of them was smart enough to be a good liar. And that's me. I just tell it like it is. I'm sorry, but I like to have some fancy word, that I've heard so many times. We played a Juilliard, didn't know it. Didn't know we were in Juilliard school. That was another story. All right, it was after the Depression, and Daddy went to Maryland. A lot of people from Southwest Virginia went into Washington, D.C. to find work. And Daddy went into Maryland. He finally got a job after the Depression hit, and he lost his cars, his home, and everything. Galax was, I hate to say it, but it's true. Galax was not kind to Daddy. And he was making so much money, going to New York. And Mama, she had her furs and her pretty silk dresses. But when he would come home, everybody would come down to the house and say, well, we're going to have music in Stoneman's Holler tonight. And they would drive down to Daddy's and Mommy's, and they'd play music all night. And Daddy had a lot of good old boys that were his friends from up in Galax, up in the mountain. And so they would take him out, one of them, I knew this, one of them, took him up and said, Ernest, if I had that land over there, I could really do real good with my crops this year, but I need that land. And he said, Daddy said, well, go down at the bank. He said, I did, but they refused me. They said if Ernest Stoneman would sign the cover, then they would let me have the money. And well, Daddy signed for a couple. One I do know, and I know of. And they didn't, and Daddy lost everything. By 1933, they took his house, they took his cars, they did everything, and they had to leave. But Mommy still thought of Galax as her home and everything. But Daddy never did want to go back, really. Mama wanted to, but Daddy didn't want to. I can understand, because, you got your pride. You got your pride. That's right. Mama said, I don't want to go. I don't even want to be buried. Daddy said, I don't want to be buried there. But we came to Nashville finally. But we had to live in this one-room house. It was one room, and it had a tent for a roof. And we had homemade chairs that Daddy made. We didn't have couches like fancy folks have. We just had a one room with the tent, a tarpaulin, Daddy called it. And he made paddles, so when it snowed or rained real hard, the boys would push it up to run it off so it wouldn't crash in on us. And I was a little kid, you know, we were free in our hearts. And so we went to school, but it was to no avail. One day we're having dinner, and this is true, and we were sitting there having whatever Mom and Dad could afford. It had a bench on one side, long old bench, and it was a table that Grandpa had made for the family. It had slats in it. And every time somebody'd get married, we'd take a slat out. And we were happy they were gone so we would have more room. And it's my turn to get in that place. Well, we were all in there one evening, and 5 school officials came to Maryland, okay? And they came up to the table, and Mama says, I am so sorry we do not have any more chairs. They said, oh, that's all right, Miss Stoneman. And they came. Mrs. Hickman was our school principal at Sea Pleasant School in Carmody, in Sea Pleasant, Maryland. And they said, but that's all right. And then she said, well, that one of the men said, Mr. Stoneman, your children are not scholastic. I remember that word. And Daddy looked down at the table and he said, yep, it's a shame. It's a shame. They got some good schools here. He said, it's a shame they're not. He said, and one of them talked, and I remember everything. It's so weird, you know, but I can't remember where I put my phone. That's another story. But anyway, I remember they said, but Mr. Stoneman, the District of Columbia came and tested them because they bring their instruments to school. And there was homemade instruments Daddy made for us. You know, he never made us play. He just made them and laid them around and told us to leave them alone. So we'd fight over them. Well, anyway, they said, well, the District of Columbia wanted to pay for 6 of your children to go to the Juilliard School. And Daddy said, that's a mighty fine, and we appreciate it with our hearts. He said, that's a fine school. He said, I've been to New York. He said, that's a fine school. He said, does any of you children want to go? He didn't say you're going to go. And Scott pulled his chair back with a table like this, you know, and Scott was the genius too. He went like this. I mean, I had a lot of brothers and sisters who were geniuses of music, but he pulled his chair back and he said, no, Pop, we want to stay here and help you feed us. Well, years passed after all them honky-tonks that we went through and trudged through and played all them, my brothers call them skull orchards. Now, y'all probably won't want to use that, but because it's so real and nobody wants to hear too good. They want it honey talked, you know, candy-coated words. But it was skull orchards, and that was some of the worst places. You could tell how many skulls were going to be crushed that night. The vibrations in the place. But then years passed, and we're in New York doing the Tonight Show. And they said, come on, we're going to go. And I said, where are we going, Daddy? He said, just get your instrument and let's go. And Dinah and Scott and Jimmy and me and Daddy got in this big old long car. It was in the back of the studio. We were doing a Tonight Show. And I said, well, I don't like that old stupid looking car. I said, we couldn't afford that, so why are we riding in it? Daddy said, get in. You're always behind like a cow, old cow's tail. So we get in and we go over to this big building and they open the doors and I go in and I hear the neatest music on my left in this beautiful room. I mean, I pulled myself up and looked in and the guy with silver hair was with a stick and he's going ding, ding, ding. And they had little tiny fiddles, I thought, my bass, but it was a bow and I went, I wonder what that is. So I went in. And everybody had gone down to the end of the hall. And I just got up and I heard the flute with that haunting sound. What a pretty sound that is. And I thought to myself, I wonder, and they didn't even pay a bit of attention to me. And I thought to myself, I wonder how they get it. How come they get that sound out of that silver stick? So I get up there and I look, and where they're blowing over this little hole. And I went, oh, doggies, I want to get one of them. So then they came and got me and went down there, and there was a Juilliard school, and we played for the kids. That was unusual. We thought, because they come in, they opened up. I said, there's nobody here, so why am I having to be down here? And they said, just wait a while. And they came in the doors, and they got the bleachers. It was a big room with mirrors all around. They had the bleachers, and then they sat on the floor. And the manager pulled his ear, and Scott started fiddling. And we just, and didn't have a paper. We don't know how to read music. It comes from your insides. You don't understand it. You don't. There's no way to explain it. I'd like to have an explanation for it, but other than hearing it all your life, you wake up in the morning, music. My brother Scott and my brothers, first thing would do when they woke up was grab an instrument, and Mommy would run them out of the house, and they'd go in different areas of the yard and up there on the hill there, and they'd play. One more thing I want to tell you. One evening, Grandpa said to Scott and me, and I'm just a little tyke, and he said, we're going up on the hill. He said, there's music in these hills if you listen. He said, you'll hear every note in these hills. And he said, so we're going to get up at 4 o'clock, and we're going to go as soon as day breaks. And we're going to go up the hill. And he said, Scotty, I want you. And so, of course, I'm going along too. And he said, sit down here and just listen. And Grandpa said, you hear that? That's a mockingbird. He said, now he has, I don't know, I forgot how many mocks he can do, how many birds they can mock. But they can. I want to check in on that.
Yeah, I'm not sure how many, but I've definitely heard a lot.
A lot, yes. And so when Scott played Mockingbird on the fiddle, and he does it exactly, I promise, you got to hear him play that Mockingbird. Do, 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 and he'd go do, 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 down on the neck and make it sound just like a bird. Scotty died in he was 42 years old. It was bad. We really loved Scott. And of course, Donna is, oh my goodness, Donna is a fine, she's been playing mandolin since she was 8. Daddy made her a banjo mandolin, and then he made her another one because she lost that one at a high school. We were playing. She was 8. And Daddy said, well, if the best you can do, you ain't going to get any more. And then she cried, but he made her another one. So that's how we played. And Donna is great. Now, let me tell you, it's not, people say, well, it's your family, and you're bragging on them. That's not true. If they sucked, I'd say they're awful. I promise. But no, Donna's a genius. Scott's the genius. Jimmy was a genius. He could hit a piece of wood, and if it had any kind of tone, he could tell you what pitch it was in. They all did that, and it was like crazy city in their house. Poor old Mommy. Mommy played the fiddle and the banjo, but she didn't play all the time. She had enough of the racket in the house. She'd say, Lord have mercy, in the name of Jesus, get out of this house. I can't stand it anymore. Because you have one room, and it's snowing outside, the kids are in it. We didn't have any toys, we had our instruments. And we would go, doo-doo, and we'd say, I like that, and no, I don't like that. And then the other one's over there playing another tune. You have to zero in with your ear. And now as women, Mommy was she was the first to record with Daddy up there in Bristol. She was. And Daddy introduced them to these people that came from there. Daddy said there was abundance of music in those hills. And that's why Mr. Peer came down. And Mr. Peer told Daddy, he said, Ernest, how you going to get these people? He said, bring them up to New York. Daddy said, no, because these are mountain people and they're not going to leave their home. And he said, well, how you going to get them to Bristol? Because Daddy told him not to go to Georgia. Go to Bristol. And he said, well, let me Now, Daddy told me this, and he wasn't a fibber. He said, I told Mr. Peer, just let that be my worry. So Daddy went down to the newspaper, and he told them and showed them how much money he made, by these canceled checks. So everybody was interested, and I saw in the magazine, it was a country magazine, and it was June, Mother Maybelle, and John Cash. They're right there, okay? And he said, Mother Maybelle said, A.P. Carter was sitting in the kitchen by the fireplace. And he said he was reading the paper, and he said, why don't we just go over to go over to Bristol and find out meet this man. He's got talent, and Ernest Stoneman brought him. And he said, well, and Sarah Carter said, no, I said, we ain't gonna make the money that man made. And he said, well, I don't know, we're gonna go anyway. So AP got Mother Maybelle, Sarah, and himself, and they went over, and that's the rest is history with the Carters. Yep. And also there was a lot of other fiddle players too. I was so proud, of the girls of the Carters, because they plowed through it too, but they kept mostly to their heritage, But we went into the nightclubs and trying to, play any kind of music with our instrument in order to make some kind of a living. I knew June, and Patsy her and Jeanette were very good friends, but the Carter girls and the Stone girls had the same dressmaker for a while when we had our television. Well, they had the arthritis. They were fluffy. Arthritis. But anyway, and the Stoneman girls were not. Isn't that terrible? Don't use that if you don't want to. But they were, they were fluffier than us. And I looked at my dress hanging beside June, and I said, get that out of here. Move my dress away. My measurements were 9, 10, 11. And it's in that order. But we always liked the Carters. But everybody would say, that we were, against each other. There was no reasoning for that. We'd had another thing going. We were trying to make a living. And I don't know, they played a lot of music, in the old days. They did, back in AP. But we were in the nightclubs in D.C. a lot. Except Daddy, we played at Constitution Hall. We won the contest there. And we were, I don't know how many weeks on television, and we never saw a television. Yep, we won that contest. Connie Begay, he became the president of the CMA. That's a story I want to tell you sometime off the record. Yeah, we were, get there, Daddy came home from work and he said, Hattie, they got a fella that was on the radio at work today, and he said there's going to be a contest at Constitution Hall. A feller by the name of Connie Begay, who is a disc jockey, he's putting on the show there at Constitution Hall. He said, well, she said, Ernest, I want to go across the creek and ask the older boys to go play with you if you think you want to do it. And Daddy said, okay, and he got up and went across the creek, and he came back, and he sat there, now I remember, I'm standing right here beside Daddy, and he said, Mama looked at him, and she had a little fire in her eyes. She was really a spirited lady. She said, what's the matter, Ernest? He said, they won't go with me. And she said, and why not? Well, because they said my music was old-timey, and they got new electric instruments, and they're taking a few of their buddies, and they're going to play against us. Don't want me to go. And Mama said, well, how long do you have? He said, 3 months. So she said, well, get instruments made, and the little ones will go down and take that prize. And by golly, over 150. We won. We was on television. We never saw a television. We didn't even know what it was. And I was about 4.5, 5 years old. And I remember singing. And the song at Daddy, we'd practice on the front porch every day, every night rather. And there'd be people with brand new cars pulling up in that old dirt road wanting to hear us play and sing. And they'd let their children come in while they'd just sit there. And we'd go, somebody's waiting for me, someone who loves me, I know. The light is shining bright in the window tonight, for there's somebody waiting there for me. That was the one we won with. And then after we'd been on a while, that's when when they opened the door and we got out of the old car, it looked like a covered wagon. And they said, here comes the Stonemans. And I took off running because my brother was in the service and he sent some money home to buy me and Donna a pair of patent leather slippers, my first new shoes. And I thought, hot doggies, this is slick. I can really slide. So I went diggity out the end of the hall and I looked over to my left and there was a dressing room and there was a man in there gluing on his eyebrows, gluing on his mustache and coloring them with white, like, Maybelline, used to be Maybelline, but it was white, and he's doing this. And I thought, what in the cat hair, I thought, is he doing? So there was mirrors, but it was lights, round lights all around this room. And I thought, well, I'm going to find out. So I pushed a chair up and I crawled on that table and looked him right down at where he was doing this and his beard. And Mama come hunting for me. She said, get out of that room and quit bothering that old man. And Grandpa Jones said, that's all right, Miss Stoneman, you get your fiddle. I'll take care of her. My first meeting, I was about 5. That was, he had to do that before he became, but he was never a grandpa. He never knew of his own grandchild. No. But anyway, now you had a question and you was talking about the women, how much trouble we had. They never accepted you. The other pickers, the men pickers, but we were used to that. It seemed like that we already felt that way, but we just went ahead and did it, played our music the way we wanted. There was one gentleman that came to the house that Scott, my brother, brought. He was a banjo picker, and Daddy made my second banjo. This was my second banjo. The first one had a little old neck like that, and Scott would say, keep your roll going. You gotta make it, don't make it a gallop. He said, and he'd get mad, just because you're a girl doesn't mean you can't play as good or better than any man. You got hands, you got a mind. And he would get angry with me. And Donna, she was great on the mandolin. Bill Monroe at one time said, if Donna and me was in a contest, he said she would win. I promise you, he said that. He really did. It was at a festival we were playing. Bill was funny. I liked him. He was really funny. He was cute. He would fire at anybody that laughed or smiled on stage. And here we are, going crazy and having fun. I guess you're tired of hearing me talk.
Not at all.
Yeah, right. There was one time that a banjo contest was going to go on at Sunset Park, Pennsylvania, up in Pennsylvania, Sunset Park. A lot of bluegrass, a lot of old-time pickers, and a lot of old, the classic country that was great in those days. And it was a contest, and it was going on. The winner of the banjo contest would get a new Vega banjo. Needless to say, I needed that banjo. At the time, I had a bunch of little children, little tykes. They were all small. And I was raising them myself because I needed to. Nobody else was helping me. My husband, he didn't want to help. He had He just had that disease that I don't want to do any work. So I had to do it, and I needed that banjo in the worst way so I could get picking jobs. So I went and got into the contest. I had somebody take me up there in Sunset Park. And the contest was the new banjo and all banjo players. And it was Mike Seeger was in the contest. And there was so many banjo players, and they're all men. And this is the gospel truth. They were all lined up. We all had just one guitar to play with us, and we were in the contest. All right, they called us one at a time. I got up there and I played. I got a good hand, very good, and I was thankful that I got through it. Scott's so good to do it, you know. So then next thing you know, we got down to 2 banjos. It was 5, and then it got down to 2. Me and this guy from, I think it was Juilliard, from somewhere in New York, okay? Anyway, and me and him against us. So we kept battling it out. Every time we'd go back there, they'd call us, and all right, Roni Stoneman. And I'm just a little skinny thing about, at the most, not 100 pounds. But I was playing so hard. It was a handmade banjo that Daddy had made. It was my 2nd or 3rd banjo he made, because I couldn't afford one. I was taking care of the children. Well, anyway, we got up there and we battled it out. And about that time, the judges, they were in a little room back at the stage, just a little room. And they called us both to the door, and they said, Roni, we can't give you the contest. He said, the people would tear this park up. We can't let a girl win this contest. And this is the truth. And I didn't feel bad. I just accepted that. But I was hurt because I needed that banjo in the worst way. And they were all sitting in this long table, and they were discussing it. I think it was about 7 or 8 judges. And I said, well, put us behind a curtain so nobody would know if we were a boy or girl. I said, and then we can battle it out. And they said, no. One guy said, oh, yeah, that's a good idea. And he started to raise up, and he put his hand up like this. And they said, no, we can't let a girl win this contest. They'll tear this park up. So the guy went home with the banjo. And I didn't get one. I went home, I told Scott, they didn't let me win. I didn't get the win in my banjo. I didn't. And he said, well, you help pay my way up there next year, and I'll go get that banjo for you. He said, I'll do it. He said, I'll make a stomping contest out of it. That was my brother Scott. Well, he went the next year, and by golly, he came home with the banjo. And that's the truth. And I'll never forget it. Then he came to borrow it. I think he sold it. He came to my house, and I came from the store, and it was gone. And I was crying, and I went to Mommy, you took my banjo. But it's funny now, but I got a picture of that at home with all them banjos. And Mike Seeger, I won't forget, he was in the back. Not Pete, but Mike. Yeah, Mike went around everywhere. That's the reason I'm on the Smithsonian record of the banjo players, because he would come around to different houses in the mountains, but he came to our house all the time, coming to Mommy's house. As a matter of fact, that picture that I showed y'all a while ago, that was on the Lost City Ramblers. Mommy said, now, Michael, I'm going to let you have this picture or use it to put on the cover that you wanted. She says, but it's all I got. Now you bring it back. It took me years to get it back from Michael. I kept bugging him every time I saw him. But it was on the front page of the new Lost City Ramblers, the first one I think he put out. That picture was. But that is a true story. But then Scott, when he sold, he took my banjo. Golly, I couldn't believe it. I came in and I said, "Where's my banjo?" The kid said, "Scott came and got it, Mom." And they were just like, oh, God, what a mess. I couldn't get it from the guy. And then I had a guy, my brother, take my banjo. Took it back. So that's my story, but that's the truth. Because the ones that are doing it today, like it was the way country music in the 60s, 50s, 60s, because they can play good, because they have to, because the men didn't recognize it. But now they are recognize it if they're talented. If they can, then they will call you, "Hey, would you come and play with me tonight?" I said, "What are you talking about? I'll go play and you play with my band." That's the way God told me did it. But it's today, I don't know who's playing good. I'm not being facetious or mean, I promise, but to go into a place to hear some music and everybody, they're loud, so loud, and you don't understand why, because you can't hear the instruments. You can't hear each one. And whenever they blend, if Eddie Arnold came to town today to get a contract, do you think he'd do it? Not. I mean, and how about Minnie Pearl? Do you think that she would be able to climb with her country? No. Nashville is not all that kind. I'm sorry, but that's the truth. I'm sorry because I don't have too many heroes, and Earl was a hero. I liked Earl. He did, when we did the Opry the first time, Earl came over to me and I just, the little skinny thing, and I had a full dress on, and he came on, and I'm going, "Wow, there's Earl Scruggs. Wow, you're waiting in the wings, to go on." And he came over and he said, "You play banjo?" He said. I said, "Yes, sir." I said, "But I don't play like you. I play simple." He said, "Keep it simple. That's the way I play." And I went, "Oh, God." And I play banjo too. Then I had this boy come over and said, "You can't play. You're a girl." I said, "Okay." And I kicked him, and Mama whooped me. Because she said, "You're not supposed to kick anybody that comes for a guest." And I said, "But he said I couldn't play because I was a girl, Ma." I won't forget that. Then guess what? He had to give me the banjo award at the Banjo Institute, and it was him. And I looked up at him and said, "Boy, you look good now. You're a handsome dude." But I remember kicking him in the shin. It was, because he was a well-known banjo player now, and Scott brought him home. They would always come to our house, in that one-room house, to learn to play. Charlie Waller, you heard of him? He learned to play in our old dugout basement, dirt floor, down there. He'd come out of high school. "We didn't go to school, didn't hurt me none, hurt me none, hurt me none." That's terrible. Then we played UCLA, and the kids, we had our own workshop at UCLA. That was in the 60s. And Scott had his workshop. I had a workshop. Donna had one. Jimmy had one. Well, he did his. Daddy, of course, he was good. He was always good at it. But there was students in this big old room. And I said, I come running out of there. I said, I seen Scott on the campus, one of these big old redwood trees. He was sitting behind it. And I said, Scott, they're asking me questions I know nothing about. He said, "Go in there and make up stuff. They're educated. They'll believe anything you say." That's what the only thing we had. And people liked it because they said, "Oh, they're like a fresh air." And I went, "Is that right?" Believe anything, just make it up. He said, "Sidetrack them. Start talking about the outhouse." Anything. He said they'll want to hear it. But they did. We did that. But we were back 3 or 4 times and played Fillmore West. with Joe Cocker's bunch. Now that's a trip. And everybody, I'm looking down. I said, "What is that smell?" Daddy said, "I think they're burning banana peelings." Honey, you don't know the fun that we've had. I mean, you go in there and then you find out, hey, that was dumb that I said it. And then you make, okay, I'm going to do it the next place. And the more universities they have you to play is when you play with their mind, because they're really interested in your heritage, but they don't understand you can play and you just hear it and play. In 1927, I believe Mommy did 26 songs with Daddy. With the Blue Ridge Corn Shuckers or the Blue Ridge Mountaineers. I don't know which name he used at that time in Bristol. Okay, the Blue Ridge Corn Shuckers. Okay, Mama played 26 fiddle tunes, with Daddy. She played on the fiddle. And, on the paper in 1927, they said in the matron that played the fiddle with Ernest Stoneman. Now, that kind of got me. I read it. I thought, she had 10 of his children by then. Besides, she played good. And it was her father. Daddy's father didn't play any music. He thought it was sinful of the devil to play the music. But Grandpa, he did. That's why Daddy quartered Mommy. He come up with a quarter because Grandpa played the banjo and the fiddle, and he'd go fiddle. Daddy liked it, so he would play too, But then Grandma thought it was a sin to play, except in church. And then one day, this is a funny story Daddy told me. Uncle Eck Dunford played the fiddle, Uncle Eck, and he talked that real funny, and it was Grandma's brother, my grandmother's brother. And he talked real country. I mean, it was, Anyway, so they played this Pentecostal church, and they played Johnson's Old Gray Mule, and they got to jumping around. And Uncle Eck Dunford, and this is the story that Daddy and Mama both told me. He said, "Well, Ernest, let's not play that there mule no more." I love that story. Let's not play that there mule no more, because people are jumping, they got the spirit or something. But I don't understand why they didn't give Mommy more credit. Grandpa Jones said to me when I was doing Hee Haw, he said, "I wish I could play like your mother." And I went, "Really?" He said, "Yeah, and she can tune it 8 different ways." He said, "I can't do that drop thumb like her." He said, "I just frail it." That's what Grandpa said. Trang, dang, dang. And I played right beside him for all them years I was on the show. And Sam Lavello, the producer of Hee Haw, didn't realize I met him when I was about 5 years old. And he was announcer there too, with Connie Begay. Yes, and then he became the president, I think, of the CMA. Yep, and that was a long time ago. I really don't think, and I'm carrying it on so much, I just don't think about it. I just play, I love people. I can't help it. I don't know where that came from. I ought to shut up and listen more, like Daddy always said. But the people are out there, and they need to be entertained, and they need fun, and they need laughter, now more than ever. In the old days, it was hard times, but they still laughed, and they still smiled, and they still played their music. They had joy in their heart and soul, and that's all. That's all I can think of. Because as far as me carrying it on, even though I like to go to the Fiddlers Convention and get in with a bunch of good old fellers and girls that play, and now they play the auto harps and they play their Jew's harp, and they make up a way to have a bass on an old tub. I love that stuff. I love the old time stuff. And Daddy gave me a book. I was not a reader in school, but I didn't like Dick and Jane. It was not very smart. So Daddy gave me a book of Cox's Folk Songs of the South. Now that was a reason to read. It told stories about all the old songs and the reasoning for it, the coal mines, and they're the real people. They're the pioneers of this world, and I love them. I try to teach them. Daddy always said, Ronnie, if you run across somebody that wants to learn to play and you know how to do it, he said, you show them, that's your duty. It seemed like Daddy was really interested in keeping it going. And we didn't understand it at first, but there was a lot of people that came to our house to learn to play, like Scott, and they learned to play, and they learned because they were interested. And that we played a lot of folk music houses during the 60s. We played the Ash Grove, the Troubadour, we played the Bernardino Playhouse or something, and we played everywhere. There was no place in California we didn't play. We played Berkeley when the natives weren't resting. And we did a whole lot of things, and we learned from them as much as they learned from us. We didn't realize that they would be so interested in what we were doing. They would hang around. They hung around us, and they would follow Daddy. When we played Ash Grove, they would always want to be around Daddy, and he would tell them the truth, just true stories. And they seemed to they missed a lot of people, young people that didn't know. It seemed like they wasn't close to their family like we were. They couldn't believe the family and Daddy was with us. They would wonder, the young people at the universities, they would wonder how come we would be so congenial to each other, work and playing music together with our father. And sometimes Mommy, I have something that maybe y'all might need. I got a video, when we had our television show with Mommy and Daddy playing, and she getting that old time fiddling done. Boy, she's doing it good. I'd like to give you a copy of that. Oh, when she played the Golden Slippers, I said, God, help me. I got a fiddle. My brother left my sister Donna 2 fiddles, and she gave them to me for Christmas one year. And I've been trying to play that fiddle, and I said, it don't sound like it good when I want to play like Mommy. I want to play just like Mommy. And she'd go, oh, do 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 do, the golden slippers, I'm gonna wear, do la do da dee. And she'd hold her head so proper, And Grandpa would play when up in the mountains. I'd go to, and I'd say, play the old hand she cackled. And he'd go, tuk, 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 and he'd do a double note. That was so cool. But I was raised in it, and you didn't know your worth. Honest. That's what was wrong with the Stonemans. They didn't know they were that good. People were introducing us to ourselves. We were playing this nightclub one time in Marshall on 12th New York Avenue called the Famous Bar and Grill, and what famous it was. And over in this corner was about 5 men, and they didn't look like the sailors and soldiers that came in and wanted to, drink and hear this noise. And so I watched them, and I got down and went over there, and I said, why are y'all here? And they said, we come to listen to y'all. This is the words. And I went, why? And he said, because we love your music and we want to study it. And I said, well, where are y'all from? We're from Georgetown. We're professors there. And I said, and you want to hear us? He said, yeah, we love your music and we're amazed. And I went, oh, okay. We love your heritage, he said. And I went, what's a heritage? That's how young I was. What's a heritage? I didn't know what they meant. But as I went on and played for the universities, we played every college and university in the United States in the 60s. So I learned from them my own, what our family was, because we just took it for granted. You wake up in the morning, you hear music. You hear music before you're born, and you don't know any different. I thought everybody could play and sing until I was in the 4th grade. And then a kid in school, when teacher was playing Camptown Races, sing this song on the piano, and this kid, it was awful. He was singing horrible, and I got up and I listened to him. I thought, he's strange. He can't sing. Why is he making that noise? Then I raised my hand, and then this so-and-so, he's making a lot of racket over here. But you see, it was a natural thing. That's all. It was there. You don't know why. It was just there, and you did it. I got 11 great-grandchildren. I'll have to listen to someday. I'll have to behave. Mommy and Daddy liked each other. That's why there were so many kids. They held hands and everything. Everything got them in trouble. Some lady said, how long, at the party the other night, she said, how many times have you been married? You know, she was the sweetest thing. And I said, I didn't ask for your measurements. No. So it's really fun. You know, music is fun if you let it be. But there's a lot of people out there that is the young folks that are really scratching and bad-mouthing each other, you know, and they ought not do that. Okay, and now you're going to get the guitar and pick with me?